Welcome back as to watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, as you know, the World Economic Forum, which held in Davos, has come to an end. However, on the sidelines of the event, Channels Television's business editor, Bosun Omofaye, asked the questions about what the plans were for Africa, considering the fact that Europe is already saddled with other challenges, including the migrant crisis. Here's the response he got.
Let's talk a little bit about 4 weeks from now. The Africa Investment Forum, which you're putting together, will be taking place at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Now, talk to us about this. This is going to be an all-African engagement.
It's an Africa-to-Africa investment forum. Really, it was driven by the Egyptians. So it's the Egyptian Agency for Partnerships and Development who wanted to host this forum, and it was the Ministry of Investment through the General Authority for Investment that decided to host Africans to have an African investment forum, because ultimately we talk about China Africa, US Africa, EU Africa, Latin America, Africa, but we never talk about Africa, and Africa needs to do more amongst themselves to drive this growth. So we're anticipating a great forum. I believe that President Buhari has accepted President El Sisi's invitation. I believe also that the President of Gabon will be there, as will others. So we're anticipating a great forum, a B2B forum, and some great debates and discussions. Here in Davos, I don't think that there's been a strong African participation. And as I said, when people have got problems back home, Africa becomes a side issue. Whilst for us, like for yourselves, Africa is a core issue, and it's where we are, it's where it's what we love, and it's where we need to deliver on our promises. Ultimately, we can't rely on others to do it for us.
Well, joining me in studio is Channels Television's business editor, Bosun Omofaye. Bosun, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
I can see you've defrosted.
Yeah, defrosted. It's from frozen.
But on a serious note, now, how did you feel when you heard that response? Could it have been any more accurate?
Ben was very, very accurate. You had a very low turnout of African head of states at the World Economic Forum. A few countries made some strong appearance, like Ivory Coast, for example. The president was there. The South African finance minister came in and went away. Nigeria's vice president came in and went away. Nigeria's president came in to meet with the UN Secretary General, went away as well. You had a representative from Kenya. You had Nigeria's finance minister. Overall, this was one of the editions of the World Economic Forum where you have very low representation. Again, as Ben put it, everybody's got his own backyard. Technically on fire, as it were. You're talking about Germany or the terror issues in Paris, or you're talking about the whole of Turkey or the whole of mainland Europe. The British are talking about getting out of the European Union, if it's in the United States. If you go to the Far East, you have issues of the Islamists in Indonesia and Malaysia. You had issues with China's Chinese economy. So everybody's got his own house on fire, technically. Then you go a little bit to the Eastern Europe, the eastern part, the Eastern Bloc. You have Ukraine, you have Russia. So everybody's got his own problems. South Africa's got its own problems. Jacob Zuma didn't turn up. The Ghanaians didn't make any representation. Kenya didn't make any, technically, as it were. So Africa's got a lot to talk about. So this is a time to talk about Africa. But again, look at what is going on with the 26th African Union Summit in Addis Ababa. Now you find Nigeria's president en route heading there. And I think Ben put it very succinctly, Africa will have to develop its own agenda and its own strategy and talk to itself. Of what much use really is an African president sitting down there when most of the discussions at WEF center around migrants issue, the refugee crisis, how to rebuild Europe as a center of capital attraction, or how to increase Europe, Asia financial markets as a hub. Well, a few issues actually concern Africa when it comes to diseases. So the one of the first main session had to do with Ebola and how to find a vaccine for that with Nigeria's former finance minister, Gavi Alliance, she's the chair of that, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, in that session. So we find a few, apart from healthcare and a few others. However, we shouldn't think that even though we're trying to solve our own problems, that we don't need to be concerned about what's happening in Europe, the Western, and in the Asian markets. We are part of the frontier markets, and whatever happens to emerging markets, which is next to us, which is China, Brazil, Venezuela, Russia, will impact on us, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, because we're largely commodity-driven economies, whether it's gold, oil, cocoa, copper, what have you.
But my question now is, when we see African leaders meeting, what we witness is a lot of talking, much more talking than action. I mean, our president right now is in Kenya, as you know, and we see the kind of meetings that's going to be going on. A trio, it's a wonderful trio of President Kenyatta, President Al-Sisi, and President Muhammadu Buhari. These three are talking about trade and also counterterrorism. But is it all going to boil down to talking about?
Things have changed and things are changing. If you look at the OAU in the years past, 20, 30 years ago, even 25 years ago, even 15 years ago, you heard more of African leaders talking about sovereign states defending one sit-tight ruler in one country, or whether it's a military coup d'etat in another country. We've seen over the years, especially in recent years, that things have changed. Trade and investment had come to the fore. The East African bloc are holding each other's together, they're holding each other's hands, and they're moving forward on a number of fronts. West Africa is also trying to do a bit of that as well. You find North Africa also holding his own hand. So African leaders, unlike 20, 30, 40 years ago, when it's all about political sovereignty of states, trying to fight colonialism, whether it's the Portuguese or the British or the French, they are now talking economy.
Yes.
Egypt will have to get its tourism back on track. Kenya needs the same. You need to get the terrorists out of the way and get more people to come. So we're getting into a time when economic, social development, human development becomes at the front burner of discussions between African heads of state, rather than sovereign states dealing with colonialism, dealing with independence of oppressive state. Those things are beginning to fade. We're now beginning to put money on the table. And I'm interested in where the money is going.
Well,
and that's why President Buhari is there.
Good. So thank you for joining us,
My pleasure.
Wilson. It's always been a pleasure having you join us. Hope you join us again. Channels Television Business Editor, Bosun Omofaye. Still to come on Network Africa. Ghanaians are far from thrilled with the prisoner transfer from Guantanamo, but the president, John Mahama, says it's already a done deal.